Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Jake from JM Media, and today we will be reviewing the Sigma 70-200 f2.8 sports lens for Canon EF. Let's get into it. Alright guys, let's not delay this video any longer. Let's burn right through these specs, starting off with the price. The price of this 70-200mm is around $1,379 on Amazon. Alright, moving on from price, we have the focal length, and the focal length of a 70-200mm goes from 70-200mm. After that, we have the maximum and minimum aperture. The maximum aperture being f2.8, so that opening on the lens is going to be like this, really wide opening, letting in a lot of light. And then the minimum aperture is going to be f22, so that opening is going to be very, very tiny, not letting in a lot of light. Moving on from that, we have the lens mount on this specific lens, which is a Canon EF mount. So that means it should fit on any full frame or APS-C Canon cameras as long as they have the EF mount. Next on the list is format compatibility. This lens is a full frame lens, so it's designed specifically for full frame cameras, but it can also fit on those APS-C cameras like I just said. After that, we have the angle of view, and the angle of view on this lens goes from 34.3 degrees at 70mm all the way down to 12.3 degrees at 200mm. Moving on, we have the minimum focusing distance, which is 3.94 feet or 1.2 meters. So you're going to have to be around 4 feet away from the object that you're trying to focus on if you want to focus on it close up. After that, we have the maximum magnification, and on this lens it is 0.21 times. Next, we have the optical design, which is the elements and groups within this lens. This lens has 24 elements in 22 groups. So what that means is that there's 24 pieces of glass within this lens. After that, we have the diaphragm blades, and this one has 11 rounded. Moving on, we have focus types, and this lens has 3 different ones. It has manual focus, manual override, and then autofocus. Manual override is just autofocus, but it allows you to make micro adjustments with the focus ring on the lens. After that, we have image stabilization, and on this lens it's actually called optical stabilization, so it's going to be represented by OS instead of IS. Anyways, this lens has 2 different types of image stabilization. It has OS1 and OS2. OS1 is your basic normal stabilization that everyone's used to, but OS2 is going to be a more intensified stabilization, so if you know you're going to be shaking a lot, I'd recommend using OS2. But for any other needs, I'd say use OS1. Next on the list is the tripod collar, and this tripod collar has 2 settings, I guess you could call them. It has fixed or rotating. If you want to rotate this lens, all you have to do is twist this little dial here till it's loosened, and then you can twist it and set it to a fixed setting and tighten it back down. Moving on from that, we have the filter size, and this lens takes a pretty big filter at 82mm. Yes, it's the same size as the filter on the 24-70, but it's still a big filter regardless. Alright, now we've reached the last 2 specs on the list, the dimensions and the weight. The dimensions of this lens come in at 3.71 by 7.99 inches or 94.2 by 202.9 millimeters. And finally, we have the weight, which is 3.97 pounds or 1.8 kilograms. Alright, we are done with the specs list. Now let's get into the pros and cons, starting off with the pros. First up on the pros list, this lens is great at isolating your subject. If you really want your subject to stand out in your photo or video, this lens is great for that because it compresses everything in your frame and it really blurs out the background, making your subject the only thing that matters in the frame. Moving on from that, the next pro on the list is the high quality glass. You're paying around $1,300 for this lens, so the glass better be high quality. And higher quality glass usually leads to sharper images and just overall better photos and videos. Which leads me to the next pro, the sharpness. This lens is super sharp even at f2.8, and it's very rare when I miss focus. It nails it just about every time. After that, we have the next pro on the list, which is f2.8. Lenses this expensive are really expected to have f2.8 available, but without it, it'd really be a crappy lens. I mean, a wide open aperture is great for so many different things, such as low light conditions, background blur, and so much more. And now we move on to the final pro on my list, the solid build quality. The overall build quality of this lens is just great. It was built with so many great materials that will stand the test of time. Alright, that's it for the pros. Now let's move on to the cons. First up on the cons list, this lens is stupid expensive. Not everyone has $1,300 just laying around, so this lens is out of the price range of a lot of people. After that, we have the next con, the weight. 4 pounds doesn't sound like a lot of weight, but if you're carrying it around all day, you'll definitely start to notice. Also, if you have a camera bag this small, it'll be the first thing that you take out of your camera bag and won't bring with you. And the final con on the list is that it's not as versatile as the 24-70. I barely count this one as a con because the 24-70 is just a completely different lens from the 70-200. The 70-200 is made for telephoto things, so stuff that's super far away, whereas the 24-70 is more of an all-around lens, so this is barely a con at all. Alright, that's it for the pros and cons. Now let's jump into my final thoughts about this lens. So obviously this lens is great for many reasons. It's great for things like portraits, landscapes, sports photography, and much more. It's part of the Holy Trinity as well, so if you want a nice all-around kit, this lens is a must. However, it's not for everyone because of the portability factor, and it's really expensive to the average everyday shooter. So who is this lens recommended for? Well, it's going to be more geared toward professionals that do shoot things like portraits, landscapes, or sports. On the other hand, it's not really made for the run and gun style shooter because of the size. Now, as for those of you that do want a budget-friendly telephoto zoom lens, I will be including links to other options down in the description. Alright, with that all said, let's end this review with some test footage from the Sigma 70-200. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys want to check out this lens, I'm going to link it in the description down below. Also, if you guys want to see more camera related videos just like this one, subscribe by clicking right here. Thanks for watching, and always remember to capture great moments.